Jews were told to stay away from our most famous landmark this week as Palestinians chanted, "Gas the Jews." Meanwhile, Douglas, we've seen politicians, academics, celebrities seeking to minimise and rationalise Hamas's barbarity.
Yes, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? Who would think that you would end up in 2023 with a crowd of people in Sydney, outside the Sydney Opera House, chanting "Gas the Jews"? This is how it happens. This is how it happens. It happens by allowing evil of this kind to incrementally just move in and grab a space in our politics, in our culture, to allow genocidal ideas to just get a grip. And they have done. They have done in Australia, as they have in Britain, as they have across Europe, as they have across the Middle East. These people didn't even have the decency, if decency is a word you could ascribe ever to them, to wait for instance, an Israeli counterattack to protest. They didn't even wait for that. They just wanted to go straight ahead and attack Israel and taunt Israel and taunt the Jewish people in the hours after this barbaric attack in Israel. They didn't bother to wait. They didn't want to wait. They couldn't wait. They just went straight in to insult, taunt, and to use the most genocidal rhetoric against the Jewish people. It tells us so much about the people. It tells us everything about the people who would attend such a rally. But it also tells us something about our own countries. How is it that modern Australia has come to this? How is it that modern Australia has come to the place that a genocidal chant against the peoples of Israel has happened 7 decades after the Holocaust? How is it that it has been the case in cities across Western democracies that we've had other people willing to celebrate these massacres? What does it tell us about us? And what are the mistakes, the vast mistakes that we have made in our countries that have allowed this to happen? It makes me shudder, and I think it should make all the civilized world shudder too.
Now, among those who've been prominent supporters of the attacks against Israel has been BLM groups, including BLM Chicago and BLM Grassroots. The very people, Douglas, who call everybody Nazis want to stand with those killing Jews. And it's been also instructive that so many of the celebrities who cannot wait to virtue signal about every cause, global warming, Trump, racism, real and imagined, well, they've been strangely silent on the worst attack against the Jewish people since the Holocaust.
Yes, it's incredibly telling, isn't it, Rita? I mean, you and I have often talked about the sort of people who mistake words for violence. Always these sorts of people who say, you know, if you say anything about my gender, you're actually sort of committing a proto-trans Holocaust. All of this sort of thing. All this weird, overhyped rhetoric, which has been allowed in our era, which has been seen to be permissible in our era. And, you know, if you're J.K. Rowling, you're sort of committing a hate crime if you say anything about the biological reality. And these same people, and it is all of the same people, when it comes to actual massacre of Jews in the 21st century, they have nothing to say. They seem to be devoid of words. It seems that somebody got their throat, which is a horrible term to use in the circumstances. Something caught their throat. They just couldn't say it. As you say, Rita, BLM Chicago showed us exactly where they were when they decided to celebrate the paragliders who went into an Israeli dance festival and started massacring young men and women, dancing in the early morning. These people from BLM know, or I assume, what it's like to be at an early morning dance festival, and they have no sympathy for the people who are there who get massacred if they happen to be Jews. That's what we're dealing with here. They've shown themselves to everybody as people who pretend to care about individuals and do not care at all if the individuals happen to be Jews.
Now, I want to play you some footage of a father who lost his 8-year-old daughter. But Douglas, he says in this, he was happy when he learned that she had died because the alternative would be even more horrific.
They just said, "We found Emily. She's dead." And I went, "Yes!" I went, "Yes," and smiled. Because that is the best news of the possibilities that I knew. She was either dead or in Gaza. And if you know anything about what they do to people in Gaza, that is worse than death. That is worse than death.
Douglas, it's heart-wrenching. That's the brutality that's been unleashed on these people.
Yes, I mean, it's beyond belief, isn't it? This poor man, one of thousands of people across the world, people in Israel, people from, I think that gentleman's from Ireland. They could be from almost anywhere. People who had a dream of living in Israel, who had relatives, children, and who the civilized world seems to have abandoned in recent years. And the idea that such a person could sit in 2023 and say that they dreamt of their child being dead rather than being in Gaza is something that is unimaginable. I mean, it's truly an indictment of our age that this could happen, that such a statement could be said. It could have been said at any point in the last 3,000 years, but our age thought that we were better than this. Our age thought we were past this. Our age thought we were past the era where a father would say, "I'd rather my child was dead than in Gaza." But we aren't past that stage. We aren't. Our age allowed this to happen. And I think that aside from the mourning and much more, we should ask ourselves how in societies like Australia, modern America, modern Britain, and elsewhere, we had societies in which terrorism was glorified at the same time that speech was vilified, but that terrorism was glorified to the extent that you would have a father, a Jewish father, say, "I'd rather my child was dead than in Gaza." It's horrific.
Finally, Douglas, you wrote a superb piece in The Spectator. You argued that Britain should stand up against those who support Hamas, strip them of their citizenship and expel them. You've been warning about this for some time. In The Strange Death of Europe, you called it a continent and a culture caught in the act of suicide. Are people going to finally listen to what you've been warning about for some years now?
You know, I wish I could say with any confidence that they would, Rita. But it's just beyond belief. There are so many warning signs that we've been given in our countries, and there have been so many excuses that have been given so many excuses that have been given in our own time, in each of our countries, by politicians, by leftist journalists and others who say, oh, no, don't pay any attention to this. This is just a fringe, or they don't really mean it. Or when Hamas says this genocidal rhetoric about the Jews, it's just part of their negotiating tactics and much more. We've seen this week that they mean it. I've argued for years, if somebody says they want to annihilate you, believe them. If somebody says they want to annihilate the Jewish people, believe them. I don't doubt that in the days and weeks ahead, there will be many people who will say, all sorts of things about Israel and the Jewish people. And I think that there is one thing we must hold on to, which is, remember that if there isn't a fence or a border around Gaza, and there is no protection of the Jewish people, the peoples of Gaza, the Palestinians, Hamas, will annihilate the Jewish people. The security around the state of Israel is not there to oppress the Palestinians. It is there to prevent the annihilation of the Jewish people. Maybe we've had a reminder of that in the last week. Why did it need this reminder? We knew it. They said it. They said it for years. It's us that are stupid. It is we in countries like Australia and Britain and America who have been naive. And we should do something about that.
Douglas Murray, thank you so much for your time this evening.
It's a great pleasure.